Hello everyone, I'm Colton. I'm a hard surface and environment concept artist, and I'm going to be painting 100 portraits. I introduced this challenge in a previous video, but basically I will be doing the 100 portraits, and I'll be making a new video every 10 portraits in order to document progress, go over the layers of my Photoshop file, maybe even record them at some point. I'll be talking about what I learned and struggled with, and I'm also going to be taking classes and getting critiques from artists that I really respect throughout the process. And then in these videos, I'll be covering what I learned. We also had a ton of people submitting portraits on the Discord channel as well, so keep an eye out for those. If you're one of the people who posted them, I'll be throwing a bunch of those up at the end of this video. So without any further delay, let's just get right into these portraits. So here is the first portrait that I did. And when I started these portraits for the challenge, I literally just yeeted myself into it. Like, I didn't have any plan or anything, and I was just like, I'm going to figure it out as I go. So throughout these first 10 portraits that I did, I actually really solidified my plan for the rest of the challenge, because initially I was just like, I'm going to do 100 portraits and just copy these pictures, and just so I can get better at drawing faces. But as I continued and went through the first 10, I realized that I really needed to solidify my goals and how I went about doing each portrait to get the maximum amount of practice. And this is actually because of just remembering what I'd taken from previous classes and talking to people that also do portraits and what they advised me to do and how they advised me to practice. So this is portrait number 1, portrait number 2, portrait number 3, portrait number 4, portrait number 5, number 6, number 7, 8, 9, and number 10. And I think I have the reference in there somewhere. Yeah, here it is. It was on the bottom. Okay. And here is portrait number 10. And I have all the layers saved. I tried to do as much as I could to keep these layers intact, but sometimes I just ended up drawing on the same layer or keeping on it. So apologies if not everything is exactly perfect in these layers. So for portrait number 1, I really just pushed myself to do the best that I possibly could at the moment. This whole portrait was just done with the basic round brush. I can zoom in on it. I just have a basic round brush here, which is this one. And I honestly did most of these with just the basic round brush. The initial sketches I did with just like a pencil brush or whatever, but most of these portraits were done almost exclusively with the basic round. So this portrait right here was to try and set a benchmark. I was trying to see exactly how good I was at the moment and basically do the best portrait that I could. And I will admit that it was pretty rough to do this. I had a pretty difficult time. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to turn all the layers off down to here, and I'll turn the sketch on. So this was my initial sketch. I'd actually just got done watching a video of an oil painter. I had bought a course and I was going through it and watching it, and I was seeing how this guy did alla prima painting. And he just went into it, and he did this really quick charcoal sketch to begin with, just to get some general proportions in. And I was trying to match that sort of thing. So again, I just threw myself into it. I knew that if I was hesitating before the portraits and really thinking about them, it would make this challenge take a lot more time and be a lot more difficult. So anyways, so there is the sketch, and based on that sketch, I started blocking in shadows. Now, like I said, this was really rough. I had a lot of difficulty with this. I adjusted and messed with the proportions a bunch of times. I was using Liquify a bunch to try and get things better. They got better as I actually went on through the 1 to 10, surprisingly enough. As I did more, I got better. So there's the first layer, just blocking in the shadows and putting down some stuff. Number 2, third layer, putting these things in, adjusting things a little bit. Now, this portrait, in my opinion, looks just terrible so far. But, I mean, a lot of the time drawings look terrible until you get further into them. Messing with the shadows, putting in-betweens with the shadows. I'm actually going to turn the line work off for now. So you'll be able to see right here, I'm really messing with the proportions a lot. See, I'm adjusting stuff, and I'm also painting, but I'm also adjusting things. Now, here's the point at which I'm starting to get proportions a little bit better, and the face is starting to look a little bit better. I probably spent 5+ hours on this, and the reason is, like I said, because I really wanted to set a benchmark for myself so I could look back at the end of the challenge and be like, I worked as hard as I could on that first portrait, and that's the best I could do. Here's this, filling it in more, rendering stuff. Put that on top. Put in the whites of the eyes and painting and blending a little bit more. Little adjustments. In the beginning, I actually did like half body. I actually went a lot lower than this. I went basically down to the bottom of this reference, but realized later on that this was a portrait challenge, not a half body painting challenge, and it just takes a long time, so didn't want to do that. I don't know what I was doing here. I just added all this hatching to the background. Maybe I was just trying to distract from how terrible I felt like this was. Blending, darkened the body below a little bit to bring focus into the face. Blending and painting a little bit. Just more adjustments. Adjustments. I really struggle with the lips a lot as well. Filled in that shadow a little bit with bounce light. There's the secondary light source, that kind of light right here. Adjusting the eyes. Adjusting the lips. And then this is the final for number 1. Like I said, really struggled with it, and I really don't like it. I kind of hate it. But I promised that I'd show all the portraits and all the nasty little secrets. So portrait number 2, I feel like went a lot better. So this is portrait number 2. Really harsh lighting. You got 2 light sources. I actually went a bit more methodical, and at this point I was just like, I feel like I need to construct a little bit more. Start off with the forms and the proportions of the head and focus on that a little bit more, because I hadn't in the first one. So I'll come down here, scroll through all these, and turn it off. So this was my original sketch. I focused a lot more on this phase, blocking out the light and the shadow. I was thinking about cores, like core shadows you can see in these sorts of areas, like right here, and different areas I was thinking about, like the core shadows and everything. Like you can see, she's got this core right along here. So, yeah, but still not super in-depth with it. Blocking it in. Blocked in all the shadows. You can see that I'm really thinking about that primary light source that's coming in from the front. And this light source, to me, feels a lot cooler than the one in the back, by the way. So I'm putting in this light source, right? I'm not even focusing on the one that's lighting from the left. I'm just focusing on the front light source. I'm messing with the shadows. Just adjustments. There, now I have blocked in graphically the light source on the left, which is a really warm light. Messed with that a little bit. Adjusting the eye. Rotated it a little bit and did a good amount of rendering. Here's some adjustments to the face. I kind of felt like the center line was pushed a little bit too far in, so I pushed it out a little bit. And then this is just detail work. You can see all these changes and stuff. I'm really trying to think about the planes here. So what I mean by that is I'm gonna discuss this later and think about this later, but for example, right, this plane right here, or this plane right here, and this depends on where my light source is, it's in the front, or this plane, right? Here's a plane, and this goes down here, and this really comes from understanding the skull and the planes of the face. So I'll talk about this type of stuff more in future videos. And like I said, I'm not the best portrait painter ever, but I have taken head construction classes and I've learned the basics of the skull and all that sort of stuff over the last number of years. Again, this challenge is just so I can really get better at it, so I can raise these and make them like not derpy. So anyways, there's that. Just made this eye a little bit smaller, and then that is the final of portrait number 2. I was actually pretty proud of this one. I worked a lot harder on it, and I kind of felt like I was in the zone a bit, but definitely still some proportional issues and such. So number 3. So I went a little bit looser with my brush strokes on this one. I will turn off all of these. Okay, so here is the initial sketch, very similar to number 2. Again, really harsh lighting on this one as well. I don't know why I chose all the harsh lighting. I bought, literally, I think I have like 200 reference packs that I have bought from Gumroad and ArtStation, and over the years, I'm like a collector of reference packs. It's ridiculous. So, I just picking random photos in there. By the way, I'm mostly drawing girls, and the reason is because I like painting girls. They're fun. So most of the portraits throughout this challenge are probably going to be girls, but I do paint some guys as well, so no worries. Blocking in the shadows, I guess I can just keep that off. So this one I'm actually spending a little bit more time filling in those shadows that I was thinking of before. See this? Shadow and light and getting those colors in. Again, really trying to break this simply down into 2 values. Here are those transitionary shapes, and kind of introducing a 3rd value. And now I'm blending. Let me just turn on the background. So yeah, there's that. Blending, adding bounce light, like underneath the nose and such. Adding, adjusting a little bit of proportions, like the lips and such. So this one's actually going a lot more smoothly now than, like, especially the first one. That was a clown show. And then more blending, you know, just experimenting. So many portraits in this challenge, I figured I'd just experiment a lot. Portrait number 4. So I actually never really finished this one that much. I stayed really loose with it, and honestly, I added so much pink, I don't even understand what I was thinking. So let's just go through these. So you can see very similar process. Here is the sketch, thinking about the cores. So I'm getting the proportions sketched in. I'm getting the planes of the face and the features sketched in and like measuring it out. You can see some of my measuring lines as well down here. So like this, here's the nose, right? Blocking all those in. And then I'm taking a shadow color. The light source in this is pretty white, so I'm taking this warm shadow color. And again, if it's wrong, I just fill it in with a different color, right? Added a little bit of purplish pink in here. I'm just experimenting. Here's the light. I was actually terrified of the hair in this one. I was completely terrified of doing the hair because I'm really bad at doing hair, and I know I shouldn't avoid it. That's the whole point of this challenge, is to not avoid things. Filled in that. Little bit of extra work. I'm not really planning the layers so much. I'm kind of just I'm making new layers every once in a while as I paint. So this is like my process exactly. And later on, you'll actually notice that I get more refined with my process. So blocked in all of this. Adding some more paint there. Okay, I'm starting to work on the hair. And then, so what I started with was I kind of blocked in the light and the dark of the hair, like what's in shadow, what's in light. And then I started adding the details later on. So, you know, I really liked this one when I made it, but right now I'm not a huge fan of it. Let's move on. Here's number 5. This one was super hard. I struggled with this one the entire time. I feel like the proportion block out was okay, but upward angles, and not only upward angles, the really, really ambient lighting of this was so hard. I really struggled on this one. So let's go through it. Here are all these layers, and there. So here is the block out. I'm doing more of the same thing, right? There's the cranium. Here's the measurements for the brow ridge, the bottom of the nose, the bottom of the lower lip, the chin, all that sort of thing. I'm adding the space underneath the chin because we're looking up. Painted in the background, and I blocked her in, her silhouette. And then honestly, I had no idea what I was doing here. I just started going crazy, like trying to figure this out. I started trying to block out the planes and just really subtle transitions between them. Blocked in the eyes and such. Just struggling with this. Honestly, I wish I could just skip this one. I call it a failure and just move on. I don't even care. Moved proportions a little bit, so now I'm going to turn off the line work just because it's not really matching the painting. Details. I think I just redid like a whole bunch of it because it wasn't working right here. Repainted the lips, raised it up, tried to make it fit over like the ball of the mouth more, added some details, added a little bit more details, and then I just called it a day there. I had worked on it for like a couple hours at that point, and I'm just like, you know what, whatever, I'm moving on. Number 6, this one actually went surprisingly bad. I got super frustrated with this one, and I think this portrait in the end turned out really good, but I literally restarted like 3 times from scratch. So I'm gonna go down here and don't even focus on that. Like, look at this. This is ridiculous. So I started with a sketch. It went absolutely terribly. And oh my gosh, like I don't even want to look at this. I started with a new sketch, also terrible. Then I'm just like, okay, you know what? I'm going to do it again. And then that one turned out the worst of all. And I got so frustrated at this point, I literally quit drawing and I had to go on a walk. And I was just like, I was so mad. But anyway, so I came back later and I just started using this one bristle brush that I have that I got from like Ahmed Al-Duri's brush pack. And I just started really carefully being like, okay, brow ridge, bottom of the lower lip, bottom of the nose, chin, like measuring the head. I started being really careful with proportions, and I just started really carefully constructing all of this stuff. So I was cooled down. I came back to it, and I literally called this layer WTF. That's how bad I was doing. I was just like, what on earth? Like, this is insane. So anyways, started again, cooled down, started adding details, and then it went super smooth from there. So adjusting a little bit of proportions, lifting the eye up, and then kind of refining that. I ended up doing this one in black and white. I'm totally not against doing black and white. I'm probably going to vary it up. All right, let's move on to number 7. Number 7 went not too bad in my opinion. I kind of like it. I wanted to mix it up and do something kind of fun, so I used that bristle brush again to block out the proportions, and I'm just trying to look at things a little bit more graphically right here. Let me grab this reference and pull it over. There we go. Okay, so blocking in these proportions, really trying to think about where, like, for example, I'll just make a new layer. Thinking about, here's the eye. I got this part sticking out. I got the nose. We got this part coming out right here. That's nice and soft. Chin. I'm looking at like the negative space between here as well. The whole point of this challenge to me, as I've like sort of developed later on, is initially I was just going in and painting faces from observation, but I later thought like I should definitely construct as much as possible so I can get better, because eventually the goal is I want to draw portraits and stuff from imagination, or at least mostly from imagination, right? Like you reference it a bit, but a lot of it's from imagination, so I can draw my own characters and stuff. So I'm really focusing on constructing the forms of the head and all of that sort of thing. Here is the cheekbone, right? This comes from the ear, bottom of the nose, brow ridge. So anyways, that's just all the sort of thing that I'm thinking about. Blocked in the background. Okay, so this layer I did a lot. I just kind of used this bristle brush and really painted like a lot, just different things. Very, very similar to what I did with the basic round in the past. See, I even switched to the basic round later on and just kind of am really trying to simplify my brush strokes and make every single stroke count as much as I can. That's something that I did really, really bad in Portrait 1, is I did not maximize each brush stroke. I was kind of just painting and painting. Like there's so many wasted brush strokes in here. And a lot of it is because it was bad. Like I put a brush stroke down and I later realized it was in the wrong place, so I had to fix it, and then I had to fix that, and then I had to fix that. So it's just like chaos of brush strokes. With these, I'm really trying to focus on my construction in the beginning, so later my proportions aren't as wrong, and I don't have to move brush strokes and repaint stuff later on, because that just is covering up what was there before, and it ends up looking really nasty. So here's the final, added a couple little details and stuff, and there is that one. This is the first one I think that wasn't just complete agony, by the way. Number 8. So this one was actually super difficult. I spent a lot more time on construction. You're going to hear me say that a lot, by the way, because that's going to be like the whole point of this challenge, and I've actually saved that. You'll see that this is probably the best looking line work and construction that I've made up to this point. I found this new brush that I really like for sketching, and this portrait was actually pretty difficult, but learned a lot from it. So there's the background. Here's the blocking. You can see that I'm just following my construction. And now I'm blocking in all this stuff. I could probably turn my sketch off, although this looks terrible. This is just like the block-in phase. There we go. So refining all this. What's in light, what's in shadow. What are the planes of the face that are facing the light? What color is my light temperature? What color is my shadow? Refinement more so. And then final refinement. Overall, I don't think this one turned out too bad. I wish it turned out a lot better, but not super unhappy with it. So, and then there's that sketch on top, and you can see I actually barely modified the final version from my initial sketch, which I'm really happy with. Okay, number 9. This one was really difficult, but I actually started getting a much better process for this. So let's go through all these different layers, getting a lot more comfortable at this point. So I did actually 2 drawings for this one. Where's that? Here it is. So number 1, I started constructing out the skull and the proportions, and you can actually see my measurements here. So the measurements with the skull is, people do it different ways, but you got the top of the head, bottom of the chin, right? You got the eyes in the middle. The brow ridge is above that. Halfway between the brow ridge and the chin is the bottom of the nose. Halfway between that is the bottom of the lower lip. Or you could go a third, a third, and a third, and this is the mouth and the top of the chin area. So there's different proportional measurements, and I don't know all of them, of course. There's other people that block it in different ways as well. Like one method is they will block in the cranium, and then they'll find this like bottom 20%. Let me just make that correct. Okay. they'll find like the bottom 20%, and that will actually be the bottom of the eye socket, and then they'll block in the eye socket. They'll sort of use these rhythms of the eyes and such, like this rhythm, which is the side of the head, this rhythm, which is the edge of the eye socket, and this rhythm, which is the cheekbone, and they'll sort of block in like that. I've actually been using that a lot more lately for my new drawings and portraits, but I'll talk about that in a later video because I'm in the middle of 10 to 20 right now. So, and then they'll come down and add a this sort of thing, right? And there's benefits to this as well because it's like halfway on the side of the head. Right, here's the cranium, here's this eye socket, side of the head. Halfway is actually where the jaw comes down. You basically got that for the skull, nose, ball of the mouth. This comes out like that. So they'll construct the skull like this, and of course you've got bottom of the nose, chin. My measurements are a little bit off. This is too high, but you get the idea. So anyways, I'll delete this and keep going through this. So that was the construction for that. Then what I did is I made a new layer, and I actually started drawing in the features a little bit more. So I'm going to lower this one. Drawing in all the features a little bit. I actually struggle with this one quite a bit because she has so much facial hair in this reference, and I kind of was like, so I guess I just masked that in. But anyways, what on earth? Oh, I know. So I first blocked in this without any color. And then afterwards, so I actually used my line work to find this, right? And I blocked this all in as one color, and then I added underneath of it a couple layers. So I'm starting to really build this up very graphically. Like, here's my light, here's my shadow. Change that into more of correct values, or not values, the correct color and value. Middle, some random details. Starting to actually refine this now. You can see that I'm starting to refine the face in this one. More refinement, trying to use minimal brush strokes to get those highlights and planes of the face that are getting hit. More refinement, a little bit of eye stuff, and then there's that. So that was the final for this one. Overall, I actually don't think it turned out that well, but this was a really big breakthrough for me because it was like a very solid process that I could follow, and I actually really liked it. By the way, I also changed brushes again to something simple. Oh yeah, and then a little bit more actually. So liquefy, a little bit of painting, and then there's the final painting. Okay, so this was actually the final. So I think it turned out okay. Number 10, I think this one actually turned out the best. This is everyone's favorite in the Discord. So yeah, this one was... I want to talk about this one a little bit. So here was my construction, right? I've got 3 layers in here. Number 1, and you can actually see that as I went along more, I'm really refining this process and compartmentalizing different parts of this process. So here's my construction, right? You've got the cranium right here. You've got eye sockets, right? Here's the eye socket right here. I drew that in. Ball of the mouth, nose, other eye socket right here. It kind of a lot of the time will end up looking like this. Like that. And then, of course, the nose will block it a lot of the time. And then this one on the other side will end up sort of looking like... Well, it sort of looks like this, I think. Here, let me just do this. All right. So I got this skull here. It's not exposed correctly. But anyways, so I got this skull here, and you'll just see kind of how the eye socket right here. That's weird to do backwards on the camera. Sort of looks like that shape. Right, and then the one towards you. So I use the skull reference a lot. I look at it from different angles and everything. I really recommend getting one of these. They're super cheap on Amazon. The reason I'm looking this direction is because I'm actually looking at the preview window of me in OBS. So anyways. Oh, and also I have this little Asaro head here, if it'll focus on it. Yeah, I have this little Asaro head that I've printed out. So don't tell anybody. I found it online and I printed it out on my 3D printer. So let's go back to this. Okay. So I'm going to try to keep this series really educational. And just let me know what you think, if it's helpful or whatever. I really, really want to just document my progress of learning how to draw heads and what I'm learning. And I want my failures to be exposed so you can avoid them. That's my whole point through this series, because I just want to learn how to draw portraits. Okay, delete this layer. Number 2, I'm actually drawing in the features now. So the eyes, you know, the eye is a ball and the eyelids are wrapped around that ball. That's how the eye works, right? So you've got your eye socket, and then you've got, you know, maybe your eye socket, and you've got your eyeball in here, and you've got the eyelid wrapped around, and you've got a plane above and below, and then you've got the top lid that comes in here, and it goes like that, right? You'll get a shadow underneath right here, and you'll get a highlight on top. This will be a shadow, and a lot of the time this will kind of all mix together into one, like that. And then this is the tear duct, and you got some shapes in here and stuff. But anyways, that's how I'm constructing these eyes, just very simply. And I actually mapped out my cores in this one as well. So this was actually pretty difficult. So what I did was I went primary light source on the left. That's my big light source. And I looked for the cores of all of, you can see them in here too if you look closely. Here's the core, right? There's the core. Here's this. There's a little bit of a cast shadow right here. Core, 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 right? And this will get softer. You got a cast shadow right here. Eyes getting light on it. Cast shadow. So I tried to block out all these cores before I even paid attention to the second ones. You'll actually see this in the painting as I go along. So, all right. Turn this off and turn this drawing off, and then come down here to the bottom. This portrait went really smoothly, I think. So I was using the drawing. Let me just lower the opacity of this drawing. Using the drawing, blocked out my light, right, based on the cores that I had mapped out. Came in here, added a dash of that pink because I really felt that in there. Secondary light source. Not as bright as the primary light source, but I started indicating the planes and the forms that are getting hit by it. Here's the shadow. There's actually a blue light as well. I think there's actually 3 lights here, maybe even more. Light on the left, kind of like a white light. I think they're both actually more white lights, but light on the right coming in, that's giving this highlight on the cheek here. Light number 3 coming from below, and you can see it's filling all these shadows. Very blue in the shadows, and you can see it right here on the hair. So I think we're dealing with 3 light sources here, potentially more, right? And the reason I think that this secondary light source is warm is because I feel some warm highlights here on the hair, this kind of S curve. So going through this, intermediary shapes, or intermediary, whatever, the transitions between them. It's warm. Blocking this in. I know there's an eye layer up here somewhere. Yeah, here it is. So I kind of worked at the same time. I sort of went back and forth between these layers. And I know for a fact that I blocked in this hair pretty early on as well. And I just really simply showed these cores. So you'll see that we've got this S curve right here in this reference. This S curve right here. And I really tried to show that in here as well, S curve. So I'm looking for those sorts of things, right? Here's this. Same thing here. Here's that. So anyways, I was really trying to show those things and simplify it and really interpret what's happening in my reference. There's the hair that's actually giving that drop shadow. No, I need to come back down here actually. Here we go. So a little bit of paint going in there. I'm going to turn off my line work. More stuff. More stuff. Indicating the teeth is just like one line. There's that hair. Here's the hair that's leaving the shadow. And then, after I've got my hair blocked out and working, I'm coming in with a smaller brush. It's actually the same brush I used for my line work. And I add these little loose strands and such. So, and then finally, highlights in the eyes. Nice, sharp highlight. Right? And my highlight, I'll just turn the highlight off. The highlight is, I'm not just doing it like this. I'm coming in here, doing that, and then I'm taking another brush, and I'm cutting out. That's actually a brush. I need an eraser. So I'm taking another brush, and I'm cutting out to give a nice sharp highlight to that and sculpt the shape in. So there's that. There's that. There's that nice sharp highlight with a very specific shape now. And there it is. So that's exactly what I did for this highlight. I'm not just putting a dot there and calling it a day. I'm sculpting this to be, I guess it would be considered sculpting. I'm like carving it out, right? So this is not a perfect circle. It's kind of like a warped shape, but I'm really trying to interpret it and give it some personality as well. So anyways, that is the 10th portrait. I'm a couple more portraits in at the moment, but I won't be showing those. So there we go. And I've got this file right here that has all 10 portraits placed in it. And I'm going to be filling this up as I finish portraits. And that is going to be it for this video on the challenge. And here is some of the artwork that we had submitted in the Discord group.